Hi, I'm Whack.
Hey, and I'm Pat. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Weekly Orbit. This week is Friday, March 14th. We're almost to St. Patrick's Day coming up. And how's your week been? I have a pretty good week to tell you about. Why don't you start with yours? Probably better than the markets.
My week's been kind of horrible
Yeah,
because crypto is horrible right now. So
I
yeah,
know.
that's no fun. So yep, that's been my week. Not fun.
Well, this was my first week not as an IRS employee. And I woke up Monday. It's the first time in like 36 years that I did not have I didn't have a job. I was like, wow, this feels unchained. I feel liberated. I do have a job that'll start next month, but
Yeah.
it just like, I've always had, I was a paper boy when I was like 12 years old. And ever since then, I've been working at some capacity. And
Yeah.
it kind of felt good just to take a break. And
Congratulations.
been doing stuff around the house. But what's exciting is next week there's a there's a Hallmark movie that is filming next week, the next couple of weeks, I should say. And it's called Newport Christmas. Okay. So it's your typical Hallmark movie where some like handsome, successful guy from New York comes home and he, falls in love with the girl working at the diner, for Christmas or, something like that. That's how all those are. Well, anyways, I got selected to be the stand-in for the main actor, Wes
Nice.
Brown. Yeah. And so that's exciting. And it's like one step above like a normal background or extra person.
Yeah.
Like you get paid more. And what you do, it's simple job, but they were looking for someone who was 6'2", athletic, Caucasian, and dark hair. And I was like, oh, that's me. And so I applied. So what you do with, if you ever been on set, it takes forever for them to set up every scene. Okay. And it might take like, say, an hour. And because the director and the camera guys and the lighting, they're all setting up and they need to make sure that everything's perfect. So when they come on, they're ready to go. Well, they need someone who stands in as the main actor, and they'll put they'll put tape on the floor, like, okay, stand here. And then they line up the camera and the angles and the lighting to make sure it's all right. And then once it's all right, then you leave and then the actor comes on and he stands where you are, So, what's cool is sometimes you get your own chair, like the director's chair,
Nice.
and you're
Nice.
always right on set. You're right there. So
Yeah.
it's going to be exciting. And so doing 4 days next week and then 2 days, like a couple weeks after that.
So you'll
two
be there
more
for the
days
whole
I do.
movie production, basically. Every scene that the lead is in, you'll be there.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, that's so cool.
They're splitting time between. There's two cities that they're doing it. So, so they have a stand-in at the other place, but in my area here, I'm going to be the stand-in. So
That's so cool.
and
Congratulations.
they do it for they do it for the female actor too. There's
Yeah.
there's two main actress as well.
Yeah.
So they hired someone for her. So it's cool because then you get to meet the person you're standing in with and Wes Brown. So yeah, it's pretty exciting. I'm looking forward to it.
That's really exciting. So it's not one of those things where like, if they're doing like an over-the-shoulder shot kind of thing, like you'll be standing in instead of the actor there, like, and like looking at the actress or whatever. It'll just be for like, setting up the scene. Is that right?
Just setting up.
Yeah. So
When
you
you
will
see
actually
that-
be in the film?
I won't be in the film.
That's fine.
No.
Yeah.
No, right.
No.
So as a background person, well, actually, they might ask me because typically if they need extras, which they're going to do, and they're short, they'll say, hey, do you want to be extra tomorrow as well? And you can do that because you're not. If you were a featured extra where your face was seen, you're done. You can't be in the rest of the movie because. You could be watching like, hey, wait, I saw that guy earlier in the show and now he's showing up again. Like, so once your face is seen, you can't be like showing again. But in a stand-in, you are because you're always off camera.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of exciting. And the first 2 days of it are at this really beautiful, one of the most beautiful bed and breakfasts you've ever seen. It's early 20th century Victorian, beautiful woodwork. It's just gorgeous. It's right down the street from where I live here, so I can ride my bike to it. And I'm really excited because it's really nice that they're showing off some of the really great places in my area here. So
Yeah.
okay, well let's get into something that's not as exciting as that, and that's markets. Ugh.
Yeah, no fun. Did you see that I actually didn't cover this on Rocket Fuel this week? I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, markets are good, but I don't want to talk about it right now. Sorry, guys. Go look at the charts
Well,
yourself.
I know. I'll be honest. I didn't look at the charts all week. I just heard like, that S&P 500 down 2% and down this and that. I'm like, oh boy. So I try to because following every day you're just going to go nuts, especially when we're in a down market like it is right now. Ethereum's at 1,889 on the week. Had just a terrible month here. On the week we're down 17%. On the month we're down 30% on ETH. If we look at ETF,
On
it's
the
just
year,
been
down 50%.
Yeah, let's go back to that. Yeah,
And then
1 year
the
down 53%.
worst part is that if you actually go back 4 years, ETH is actually lower than when it was in 2021 at this point.
That's true.
Yeah, so like that's actually been like really painful for people like to realize, because there's this idea in crypto, right, that like if you buy and you hold for 4 years, you'll be in profit, and that's kind of true with Bitcoin, where there's been a couple of moments where it's not been true, but for the most part, it's been true for Bitcoin, and that is decidedly not true right now. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, ETF outflows are no better. It's all outflow since last week, as we can see here, all in the red. Let's see how RPL is doing. Currently at $5.16. It's down 14% on the week, so not as terrible as 17% on ETH terms.
But that 30-day number is
30
brutal.
days, 54%. Yeah,
And that 1 year number is absolutely horrific.
Yep,
Down 86% in 1 year.
That's rough.
That is really rough, yeah. So ETH down 50%, RPL down nearly 90%. Like, it's just been an absolutely brutal year for RPL holders. It's been really tough. Like, there's no sugarcoating it. Like, this has just been a horrific year, and that's why sentiment is so low in the Rocket Pool community. Like, it's abysmal right now. Like, a lot of people who were kind of like on the peripheries of the community just aren't around anymore. Like, the number of people like speaking and trading's still busy, but the number of people has gotten much less. Like, overnight especially, like the number of hours that you can go without like people commenting. Like, I've seen people not leave a message in trading for like 3 or 4 hours, and that's because like sentiment is down so bad. It's horrible. It's really, really horrible.
A lot of this has to do with macro, what's going on in the macro world. We've talked about that in the last few weeks. Consumer confidence is down. We got this whiplash. We talked about uncertainty last week. I think you mentioned how investors really don't like that. Who is it? There's an old saying, a bad decision is, a bad decision is bad, but making no decision is worse. And when you have like Trump with his tariffs, like, oh, we're going to levy tariffs, and then a few days later it's like, well, we're going to delay it, or well, we're going to get an exception here, exception there, and then you just don't know what's going to happen from day to day, hour to hour, coming out of the administration. The chaos that is ensuing is partly, and investors don't like, at least like make a decision, right? And then we can plan for it. Okay, if you're going to levy 25% tariffs on Canadian steel in your Ford or General Motors, then okay, this sucks, but at least now let's look at our supply chains and see what we can do, yada, yada, yada. But then it's just a whiplash back and forth, and you don't know what to do, and it creates so much uncertainty in the markets. You mentioned at some point the uncertainty becomes a certainty. If you get months and months of this, like, investors they start to figure it out, like, oh, well, Trump says this, but he really doesn't mean that, because in 30 days he'll change his mind or something. Like, so do you have any thoughts on macro in general?
Yeah, macro's like an absolute shit show. Like I said, the uncertainty is just huge. People don't know what's going on, so they're sidelined, they're waiting. There's people with cash. There's there's some people in cash, but there's some people like who have their companies, their businesses, They don't know whether they should be buying things from other countries, whether they should be paying, are they going to be paying tariffs? Are they not going to be paying tariffs? It's just really, really low sentiment in the wider market. And what's not helping is that, when people are asking these politicians, like, do you think, we're heading for a recession? Then they're not giving convincing answers that we're not heading for a recession. So people are just like kind of bracing themselves for a potential, big downturn in GDP. The Atlanta Fed, a few weeks ago had their estimates for Q1 GDP growth at around 2.5 to 3%. Now they're saying there's going to be a 2.5% contraction of GDP. And that is just like shocking. That's a 5% like reduction in
Swing.
economic swing, in economic outlook. And that's huge, like that's literally trillions of dollars worth of economic output that is being impacted by this. And it makes sense that, markets are jittery. There might be some hope for crypto in that, with these economically uncertain times, other countries around the world are already taking action, like to try to help bolster their economies, and money printing, it looks like, is happening. So the M2 money supply has been trending up for the last few weeks, and normally, the way that the patterns kind of worked is that crypto prices are like lagging M2 money supply by like 6 to 10 weeks. So if that happens, it looks like we might be bouncing up in the next few weeks potentially. So that's something, some hopium maybe. I don't know if it's going to happen like that, obviously, but that's looking like that's the case. So the M2 money supply is ticking up, and with this uncertainty, I think other countries are just going to do more stimulus to help their economies kind of like deal through this rough patch. Because like the US sneezes and the world catches a flu, right? Like it's really bad. Like so much of the world's economy is dependent on the US economy and how it does. So
Yeah.
for crypto, just crypto, like that's a bit of hope there. Obviously, like for the wider global economy, that's kind of terrifying. So it's scary times.
So what crypto typically is like the canary in the coal mine for the rest of the markets, because it's a 24-hour trading. Usually you see movement in crypto markets before you see it in the broader like equities markets, for example. So
Yeah.
we're seeing it now with huge downturns. And then at some point, if you start seeing the upturn, maybe crypto sees it first before equities, right?
Yeah.
Well, I guess we'll see if all that M2 money supply increase is going to have an effect on asset prices in crypto. Well, let's hope so. I just feel like, I mean, from an outsider looking in, you must think the Americans are thinking, hey, let's burn the village down in order to save it. I don't understand getting in fights with your closest allies in Canada, for example. I have friends in Canada who are texting me like, what the fuck are you people doing down there, right? What is going on? We're friends. We're supposed to be friends, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, are you purposely trying to tank things or what?
The thing is, like,
Right.
even if you do like a really, really charitable like understanding of what's happening, the fact is that trust is being broken, right? And this is like, decades, in some cases, like with Canada, like centuries worth of trust that's built up with the US, and this understanding of a relationship. It's international partners, decades long relationships, treaties, have been formed, and that is all being burned away. And even if it's like, hey, we were just like doing this as a game, like trying to change the board a little bit. The problem is that you might be able to make relationships again, but I feel like the quality of the relationships will go towards more like a diplomatic transactional relationship rather than a relationship of like friends or like trusted parties, like, and as international friends, you know what I mean? And I think that will have a lasting impact like on these relationships. So
Yeah.
I can't imagine like saying to Canada, hey, like the Canadians like have this like stereotype of better or worse, whatever, however true it is, like they're the nicest people in the world or whatever, and they're pissed.
I know.
So it's like, what's going on here?
I heard this, like I read this or heard this. It was a Holocaust survivor who said, "You know who a true friend is if they are willing to hide you. Are they willing to hide you? If they are, your true friend. And I was thinking, in that she was referring to, those like Germans who took Jews into their home at great risk of their own personal lives to hide during the Nazi reign in Germany. There's the Canadians in Tehran in 1980. There was a Canadian diplomat who hid American diplomats in their embassy, their little safe house there, knowing that if they got caught, they would themselves would be hanging from a crane. And they hid these American diplomats and got them out of the country at great risk, personal risk to themselves. Like the Canadians are like our best friends. The longest unprotected border in the world is between the United States and Canada. They have been side by side with us, and during all the wars we've been through. And anyways, they're all good people, and I just don't. We cozy up to people like Vladimir Putin, and we get in fights with our best friends in Canada. Like it seems completely opposite of what it should be. So, anyways. We'll see what happens with this, but I kind of feel I was thinking like our predictions at the end of last year, and I feel terrible. And I remember I had opined earlier that like, hey, everyone's really excited that Trump's going to be president, and we're going to have this huge crypto boom. And I remember expressing some skepticisms about, well, his economic policies might really have an impact in the broader macro. But I kind of put that aside and jumped on the bandwagon with predicting 15,000 ETH. And now I'm looking back on it, I'm like, well, maybe I was kind of right there to express skepticism because the guy bankrupted his own casino, which I don't know how you do, but he figured out a way to do it. And so we'll see. But hopefully better things to come, but we'll keep an eye on markets. But in the meantime, we go on to some rocket pool news. Etherfi, they put in here, there's on the screen, 1,400 rETH they transferred from their liquid ETH, which I think is their eETH, to rETH. They have a balancer pool here. This is kind of cool because they've had this for a bit. Right now it's earning anywhere from 4 to 8%, but it's nice to see what is some people think is a competitor. It's an LRT buying rETH and creating their own pool with it. What is the rationale for them to do this, Whack? Explain it to me like I'm 5.
Yeah, okay. So you, as a protocol, like to survive, you need to have liquidity for your token. Like it's just the reality of the situation. Like especially if it's a liquid token, like the whole point of a liquid token is that, you are liquid, right? Like, people can trade in and out of that position. Mm-hmm. And when you are an ecosystem token, most of the time what happens is you have a pair with ETH. So you have, our ETH with a wrapped ETH pair, basically. Like that's what a lot of Rocket Pool's liquidity looks like. Like we have our ETH with ETH, and on Balancer or whatever, whatever PancakeSwap or whatever it is, there's a lot of depth, and that people can trade in and out of it. And right now, we're off peg. We're about 0.75% down from the peg discount. But the idea is that you can move around hundreds, thousands of rETH and ETH in and out of those positions without needing to depend on the protocol itself, because protocols are designed in different ways, and you can get your crypto in and out in different ways. So, for example, Etherfi have a redemption at peg system, but it could take up to 9 days to get your ETH back, right? So sometimes people need it quicker, so you need to have liquidity. Now, so you have to have liquidity. That's basically the name of these products, like liquid staking or liquid restaking tokens. Now, when it comes to some of these protocols, what they do is like Rocket Pool. So the IMC's job is to make sure that our ETH's liquidity is as good as possible. And the way we do that is we bribe, these people who can direct liquidity on different protocols. Like we give them money, and then they vote for us to get more incentives. So like there's places like Hidden Hand and these kind of groups that do this for us. So we pay for liquidity, we rent liquidity by giving incentives. Another way of doing this is to have something called protocol on liquidity. So the protocol itself will have some crypto, and they will use that in the pools, and then they will make it liquid through that themselves. So the IMC actually also has this. We have a position with RPL and rETH. That is a protocol on liquidity position, and we slowly adding to it over the course of months and years. So those are the two main ways that you get liquidity. Is one, you have it in your protocol yourself, and the second is that you pay for it to have it. Now, if you have it in the protocol yourself, the problem is that when you have an ETH LRT, like Etherfi's case here is wrapped ETH, half of that is unproductive. So you are sat in ETH, but you're not actually getting any rewards for that. That's just flat. So it's unproductive in that sense. You are not getting any yield on that. So what they can do, and what this pool here is doing, it's a rETH wrapped ETH pool. So what happens is here, both tokens that you've deposited are actually making income. So you don't have to incentivize it as much for people to add liquidity to this pool, because what's happening is that they're getting some rewards from both sides automatically, and that makes it more profitable to use as a baseline. So that's the idea why you would have a pool like this. And actually, it's not just Etherfi who have this kind of pool. I think OSETH, which is from Stakewise, they also have a pool with rETH as well, and OSETH, rETH, and I think there's a similar reason why that is. So it's really cool that you can do something like this.
Does Etherfi also have a STETH pool?
I'm not sure. I think someone in trading was talking about how they have another pool as well, but I'm not sure which one that is.
Because you earn yield on STETH as well.
And well,
there is deeper liquidity with it.
But I think the idea then is, Rocket Pool is maybe more aligned and stuff.
That's nice.
You're helping them out kind of thing. So Jasper, actually, if you go back to trading, he was saying they've done a lot to help Rocket Pool with things like this.
Right.
Now, what's really interesting here is that they're actually providing incentives for this. So there's $3,800 per week of incentives going to this pool, and those APR numbers are looking quite good. There's some trading fees coming in. There's not much, and it goes up and down, but it looks like there's some liquidity that does actually go through here. So it's really interesting that they've had $31 million worth of liquidity in the volume in the last month. That's actually pretty good.
Right. Hats off to Etherfi. They seem to be doing the right thing, aligning with Rocket Pool here with rETH. And it's a good thing. Nice to see that's a sizable amount of rETH that was bought here, 1,400, as it shows here in trading. That's kind of cool. Let's move on to the next thing. We had a vote that's been going on, RPIP 68. Yeah, well, let's focus on this one, increasing the oDAO share of inflation, because that's the one that I think is most interesting. This would, as it says here on the screen, it would change the oDAO share from 1.5% of inflation to 2.5%, and it would reduce the pDAO share from 28.5% to 27.5%. And there's concern, Wack, that oDAO members are not profitable based on the current price of RPL, and that it should be at least marginally profitable to help run the oDAO. And right now it's at 85% for, 11% against. And if we look at, I want to focus on Ramana here. He voted against. In his explanation on why, he writes, the oDAO should consider their member count before a pDAO bails them out. Also, oDAO could possibly do more to support Rocket Pool growth in the broader ecosystem, which would be a better solution to the problem of low RPL price. So let's talk about that for a minute. First, how many oDAO members do we have? I did a quick search of this. I just did an AI search, to be honest. Who are the current oDAO members of Rocket Pool? I did this on Perplexity, and it only listed 9. I know we have more than that. The rocket scientists, for example, are not on this list. Shown here is Anthony Sassano, Bankless, Consensus, Nimbus, Lighthouse, Superfizz, Beacon Chain, Gitcoin, and Coinbase Ventures. Who are we missing from here besides the rocket
We're missing
scientists?
the 4 Rocket Pool oDAO seats as well, and we're missing the rocket scientists, so that takes us to 14 right there.
14.
And then I think we're missing Etherscan. Yeah, Etherscan's not on that list.
So we got
And I think we're missing one or two more as well.
so
Yeah, I think we're
15.
missing one or two more. The best place to go is to just go to the Rocket Pool website, and it should tell you there what is who's on the oDAO. But it's yeah, I think there's 17 seats right now because crypto manufacturer left, and then yeah, if you go to protocol, that one, yeah, and then there's yeah, I don't know, I haven't checked the
Yeah.
governance maybe.
Well, anyways, the
Yeah,
broader point is that he's saying, hey, maybe we have, instead of 17 members, why don't we reduce it? And then that way there'll be more RPL to share. As that's one of his ideas. Let's start with that first. Does that help
yeah.
if we reduce the amount of oDAO members?
I think the problem with that is it doesn't actually reduce the numbers. Sorry, it doesn't actually increase the amount in a meaningful way. So this going from 1.5% to 2.5% is a 66% pay rise. Let's actually like clarify why this is happening, right? So the oDAO members get paid in RPL inflation, and each oDAO seat gets a certain amount of RPL. Now, in the past, this was 15% of inflation went to the oDAO. That is now down to 1.5% inflation. So they got a 90% pay cut from what they used to get in the beginning when the protocol launched. Now that, they were getting paid too much before, right? The price of RPL was high. That what happens is they get paid in RPL, but they have to swap the RPL to pay for ETH and gas fees, to do their transactions. So, or they gotta pay. They can either keep the RPL and just pay for the ETH out of their pocket. But the RPL they're getting is getting close to the point where it's actually like losing money. And the problem with that is, even if they, even if we reduce the oDAO size by pretty much like a third, that's how they would get the increase. But that, do we really want that to happen? Like maybe yes, but it might be that it's disruptive to the protocol to get rid of such a large number of oDAO seats in one go. Now, some people in the community would be happy with that happening. Like they would say that a lot of these oDAO members are actually not helpful for Rocket Pool. They're unproductive. Like the node can go down for weeks or months at a time, and they don't even know that happened. And blah blah blah, like all these different things. Like they're not the best they could be. They're not very good at actually checking the contracts. Like there are people in the community who do a better job of being oDAO members than the oDAO members do themselves. Like those kind of ideas. And so there is an idea that a smaller oDAO would be good, but in this for this specific reason, I don't think it would help those people get more money unless we did it in a drastic way, and that I think would be more disruptive than it would be helpful. Now with the promotion of Rocket Pool around the broader ecosystem, that's actually not in the oDAO charter at all. Like that's
Right.
not part of their duties. So even if a person has hundreds of thousands of followers on X, their job is not to shill Rocket Pool. Like if they want to shill Rocket Pool, that's of their own volition. If they want to say nice things about Rocket Pool, they're welcome to do that. But that's completely up to them. There's no one in the Rocket Pool community who can say, hey, your oDAO seat is dependent on you shilling Rocket Pool. I think people might not have even joined. Some people wouldn't have joined if that was part of the reasoning. So I think Ramana's point here, I can kind of see where he's coming from, but I think both points of his kind of missed the mark a little bit. And I think that's the reason why he is the only large delegate so far who has voted against this proposal. It's 85% in favor, 11% against, and 4% abstained. Now, what's really interesting about this vote is actually you need a supermajority of 75% of people voting to approve it for it to pass. So if this doesn't hit that threshold, then that's what would happen. Now, for example, if me or Patches or Val or no, not Halulu, but yeah, actually not Val either, just me or Patches, if we switched our vote from approved to against, actually no, that's not right. Val and Halulu as well. Yeah, and Langas too. If we switched our vote to against, then we could actually flip the result of this vote to make it fail. But at the moment, it looks like it's going to pass, and I think that's how it's going to end up going. But Yeah,
I think
like this
Romana's
is
broader point, though, is I think there's and this has been an issue for years, is that there should be a greater accountability for the oDAO members. Like if you're running it, then what is your performance metrics that we're measuring you on? Your system is down for weeks. Why are you not? Why are you not kicked off? You know what? We're paying you to do this, and you're not doing your job. And I think on top of it, it's just like not only you're not doing your job, but you never say anything good about Rocket Pool either. Like you got a big platform, whether you're
client
several
yeah.
people, clients. So as you said, it's not in the oDAO charter that they have to go out there and shill for Rocket Pool, but I think it kind of adds on to the sentiment that hey, some of these guys are not pulling their weight, right? You're being paid to do a job, then do it. And I mean, the rocket scientists certainly are. They're active in the community. They are probably the stalwart. They're the most dedicated members who are running their oDAO as they should and promoting Rocket Pool. So perhaps there's a further discussion later to talk about how can we make sure that, what do we do if there's a oDAO member who is not performing their duties? Should we have an easier way to eject them or warn them or something? Because it has been a problem in the past. And
So this is actually a point that Noshua brought up in trading yesterday, and he said if you actually do go to the charter, like the oDAO members aren't fulfilling their duties as a whole, and he actually brought up a few different sections of the charter, like some things like signer transparency, like we don't know who is signing on behalf of some of these oDAO members, like we don't know their names, we don't know who they are. We're not asking them to dox themselves, but we would like some information to make sure that a person who's signing for one oDAO seat isn't also signing for another oDAO seat. That would be really bad, right? And we don't have that information, even though that is something that they were supposed to disclose to us. oDAO was also supposed to do some kind of like community communication or some kind of town hall or that kind of stuff to make sure that everything, like just answer community questions. That's not happened. So there are things in the oDAO charter that the oDAO is not doing, and the oDAO within themselves, I think they've got their own Discord channel or server or something where I'm not obviously in the oDAO, so I don't know that, but I think the people who actually are trying to push conversation in there are people who are rocket scientists, who are community members.
Yeah.
So like they're trying to push things, they're trying to get discussion going and getting feedback and responses from people, but it's not happening the way that it should be, or at least in the way that the wider community knows about it. So I think there's definitely some questions that are legitimate, but I think for Ramana's points here specifically, both of them kind of miss the mark,
Right.
which is fine. But the idea is that the oDAO could be better. I think we can all agree to that.
Correct. I think that's the overall sentiment is that
Yeah.
they need to do better.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's move on to our next thing here is we had a community call on the 11th of March where Langers and Ken were on. Mav was on the call as well. They went through several different things. Many questions from the community were answered. And one of them that came up, we'll just talk about a few real quick. Smartnode V2 was expected to be coming out soon, at least on a DevNet to test. And Langer said that what they found is there's certain things in it they like, and there's other things in it that they didn't. And so what they've decided is they're going to integrate over time some of the features from V2 into the V1 version. And then when Saturn comes out, might be called V2, but it's still going to look like V1. That was my understanding of it. So I guess I don't know if I would call that a setback. I think maybe as a learning, they just learned that hey, perhaps it's better to just integrate some of the things we like into the existing code that we have with V1. Did you pick up on that during the call?
Yeah. So the key thing here was that to have V1 and V2, they would kind of have to keep both versions going for a while, and that would add more difficulties for the limited dev team before everything was migrated over. So instead of doing it that way, I think they're doing it the opposite way, where they're going to cannibalize the features of V2 and just put them into V1, and that way they could just have one Smartnode going forwards. I think it does make sense the way Langer's explained it, in that the management of the different versions would be difficult, and you can't force people to migrate from V1 to V2, but they kind of would have to, and it's just maintaining two versions would be double the job. So I kind of understand where Langus is coming from with this. I think Patches and Fornax, who the two of the main people who are working on the smart node, they seem from what they've said in the community call, it looks like they're happy with this. They think that this is the way forward. So that makes sense then. Like, if the people who are actually working on it want to do that, that's totally fine. There are a few things that I'm curious about, because one of the things that I was really excited about was that Smartnode V2 was going to remove, it's a rewrite basically from the ground up of the Smartnode. This is what Joe started working on before he left to join the NodeSet team. And he actually carried forward some of that work into the NodeSet client hyperdrive, where they had like a shared repository of code that Joe has kind of built up and then carried on over there. It looks like that's not going to be used to the full extent now. One of the things that was changed was V2 was going to be written from the ground up with webhooks enabled, so you could kind of build a interface on top of it, like a graphical user interface on top of it. I'm not sure how that's going to be integrated now, so it might be that will get pushed back a lot. But some of the features and things like that, they'll be incorporated into V1, and that they'll just carry forward with that. So I don't think it's necessarily like a setback necessarily, but I think the team just realized that our priority is to get Saturn out, and we don't want to add more complexity right now to the protocol. And maintaining multiple versions of the smart node would just make things needlessly complicated, when the main thing that we want to do is get Saturn on target, on time, because it's just such a monumental change for Rocket Pool in itself that that's what we want. So I guess the idea, like you said, you hinted at, was like that they will incorporate features from V2 into V1, and then they might call, once Saturn 1 is out, that version of the smart node that has the contract upgrades used in there, they might just call that V2, but it wouldn't necessarily be with the new architecture. It would be with the old architecture.
Yeah, I guess the technical hangups were on the oDAO side of the smart node.
That's right.
I remember what Langers was saying. So without getting into all the technical nitty gritty, but that is basically what the issues were. The other thing that came up there in the community call was, what is the timeline on Saturn? How are we doing on it? It looks like we're a little behind on the DevNet 2. However, Langer said he's still confident that it's going to ship in Q3 of this year, of Saturn 1, which was good to hear. He said that basically the DevNet 1 and DevNet 2 are the most complicated of the DevNets. And he says that after we get over that second DevNet, things get a lot easier. That was my take from it. Yeah. So that's good to hear. I mean, to be honest, I know it was, I think July or early Q3 was the target date. Just because things always get delayed, I was figuring it's going to be not in July. He's still pretty confident that we can hit July or early Q3, so which is good. We'll see as things pop up. But yeah, I guess this is the hardest part right now. We're in the DevNet 1 and 2, so they're a little behind on the DevNet 2 apparently.
Yeah, and one thing to notice as well was that DevNet 1 was a week late going out, so that was automatically a week late. DevNet 2 is not supposed to be out until the end of March. So at the time of the community call, we still had 3 weeks basically to get the call out and to get DevNet 3 out. And Langers did seem like that was going to be on time, and they're going to be able to do that. So that's okay. And he did say as well that the timing that they're losing now potentially could be made up later. So it looks like the July number is still kind of what they're holding on to. So that's great. Like I'm still saying July. Of course, Hofstadter's law tells us that any software development timeline that you have will be late, and even if you account for it being late, it's still going to be late. So that's just how it works. So we always have that in the back of our minds, but I think we can say that we're still on track basically. So even though there might be like Holesky, with the Pectra hard fork had some issues, that's made some testing not potentially might delay some testing stuff, but they're still confident that we can go ahead.
Yeah, and the last thing was about the Holesky testnet, and we're running DevNet on Holesky, and that came up during the call. How has this been affected? And he said, actually, it's not really that big of an issue. It would have been a few weeks ago, had it when they were just about to launch the DevNet, but since they've already got multiple weeks of testing already done on Holesky, it's okay. And it turns out that it looks like they've finalized in this tweet here, Holesky finalized. Great job to everyone who helped make it happen. We'll let the network stabilize a bit and announce next steps along with a full perspective. So looks like Holesky is going to be okay. And so I think Langer said, it sounded like they were going to still use Holesky, for the DevNet too as well. Especially now that it's finalized, it seemed like the network is all right. So that's good to hear too, because that was a question I had, was how is this whole Pectra fork that happened on Holesky going to impact Rocket Pool?
Yeah, that's a question you had, Pat, but you didn't put it in the thread. So this is a good reminder that there is actually a thread now with the community call questions from the community that you can put your questions in there in advance. And I didn't see a question from you, Pat, so calling you out, but calling out other people too, because it's actually a really good resource where you can put your questions in that thread, and then Langers will answer your question on the community call. So normally it was a case that they'd have an agenda beforehand that they would kind of talk about, and we didn't know what that agenda was. And then during the call, Ken would look at trading and see what people are kind of asking and kind of ask those questions of Langers. But I think with this new thread that Mav set up, it's a little bit more formal, and I really like that because we can ask questions as we're thinking of them, days or weeks in advance, and not everyone is around live for the call. So I wasn't live for the call, but I listened to it, the following day. And my questions, two of my answers that I put in the thread were answered. So I was really happy about that. So I think that's a really good thing to remind the community that if you have questions of Langers or the protocol, put them in that thread, and either Langers will answer himself or he'll find out from someone else on the team beforehand, and then they can answer that on the call. So that's actually a really, really good reminder for you all to make sure that you are using that thread.
Yeah, I like that as well. Let's go on wins for the week. So my win was that with Holesky, that they were able to finalize it and save the testnet. I think they had, when they started Holesky, it had a time frame of 5 years that they're going to use it. And I think we're a couple of years into that. So it's kind of good that they were able to play around with, hey, say you had a bad fork on mainnet. Well, we had a bad fork on the testnet, so let's play around with it, do some more games. They were able to save it and finalize it. So I think that's a win for the Ethereum community. Yeah. How about you? You have a win?
Yeah, my win for this week is that my family and I are starting to come up with some summer travel plans. So it's looking like it's going to be a really nice a couple of months, basically. We'll be traveling for my wife's work, but we'll all be traveling together. And then there'll be some other things that are happening as well that we'll be taking part in. But it looks like it's going to be a nice summer. So I'm excited about that.
Awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, thanks for sticking with us. We will be back next week. I think next week we're going to record on Friday instead of Thursday as normal, because I'll be standing in for Wes Brown. So until then, we'll see you. Thanks for liking and subscribing, and we'll see you next Friday. All right? Take care, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.